Howdy, folks. I'm Brian.
I'm a sickly Amber.
Yeah, she's not feeling very well, but she's here for us anyways. And here's some Reddit. Our first letter is titled, Am I a jerk for letting my child climb on a rock? Now, Amber every day sends me these stories, and she always gives me a nice, summary of them, so I don't actually read them ahead of time, but I do get, a summary of them. And I will say one thing about this one. It's very deceptive. Very, very deceptive. And you'll see why in a moment. Hi, I am a 34-year-old woman, and my 3 children are a 12-year-old boy, a 9-year-old boy, and a 7-year-old girl. My husband is a 35-year-old man. A couple of weeks ago, we went on a trip to visit some historical sites in several countries in Europe, basically like a road trip. My husband had a terrible headache on the 4th day of our trip and stayed at the hotel while our children went to a dolmen. When we got there, my children were a bit bored, so I let them run around and play for a bit. There weren't a lot of people, so they were not bothering anyone. And then my 9-year-old climbed on one of the boulders of the dolmen. He looked so proud of himself. When he managed to climb up, I wanted to take a photo of him, but then a girl, around 19 I'd say, walked up to me and sarcastically said, "Do you let your kids climb on their grandparents' graves like that too?" Needless to say, I got a bit angry and told her to mind her own business and said that a 5,000-year-old dead guy won't mind if a child climbs on a rock. Her face looked like I just killed a puppy in front of her, and she walked away. When we got back to the hotel, I told my husband about it, and he said it's a bit tasteless to let someone climb on what is essentially a gravestone. I got mad because he wouldn't support me and undermined me in front of the children like that. I went to the bathroom where I called my sister to tell her what happened. She said the girl shouldn't have approached me like that, but that I was also wrong for the way that I responded to her. I told her that the girl was out of line to talk to someone that's older than her like that, and I hung up. Yes, age is the qualifier here. It's been a couple weeks now, and it just hasn't been sitting right with me. I've been thinking that maybe I'm the jerk, and I guess I can see why someone would see a dolmen as a grave. So am I the jerk for letting my children climb on a rock?
I'm gonna say yes, but I think the bigger issue here is OP's overall attitude.
Yeah. Well, I agree on that. I think that the whole, you can't tell me what to do because you're younger than me or whatever, really just kind of undermines the everything here. If you go to a store and someone who's younger than you is a manager at the store and they tell you not to do something, you're like, oh no, I can do that if I want to. Don't tell me what to do because I'm older than you. That doesn't make any sense,
no.
Right? And, sometimes when you are in a job, someone will be younger than you and, be in charge of you. And so the whole idea that being young is the sole, linchpin in her argument. Well, she was too young. If it had been a 70-year-old, woman who had approached her and been like, "Dear, don't let them play on that gravestone," then she would have been fine with it, sounds like. So I do think it's the attitude more than anything.
Kind of generally, if you're going to historical sites and especially from other cultures and stuff that you're not a part of, I really think she was just kind of letting the kids use it as a playground instead of teaching them about it. If you're going to these sites, this is a great opportunity to teach the kids about this other, history and culture.
This culture, exactly.
And so I think just letting the kids play on it and not giving them any significance or anything really does a disservice. And I can see why someone would be frustrated if these kids are sitting around on gravestones because we have an idea that you don't want to go climbing if you saw someone in a cemetery climbing on top of the tombstones,
you would tell them to get off of them.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if they're old. It wouldn't matter if it was an old monastery and they were just climbing on top of the roof of it. People would be like, "Hey, don't do that. That's disrespectful." So I think it is pretty disrespectful of the culture, and I think it's pretty disrespectful to not take that with a little bit of seriousness now.
Right. Our next story is, am I the jerk for throwing a party for my daughters after they were uninvited? My daughters, who are 10 and 11, both have purple hair. They love it, this way and have been getting it dyed since they were 6, with caution. They were invited to a little girl's birthday/Halloween party under the condition that they have their hair dyed a natural color. I asked why, and the mother insisted that their hair would take away from the birthday pictures because they'd draw attention.
Well, I'd just like to point out for a moment that purple is a natural color. You can find purple in nature.
Yes, indeed. I asked if my daughters could just not be in the pictures, and she said that there's no way to guarantee that and to either dye their hair a normal color or they can't come. I said fine. This was like October 8th, maybe 9th, so I decided to throw a party for my daughters on Halloween since they won't be able to go to that one, and invited her classmates. The girl was in a completely separate class. We had the party, cake, bounce house, candy piñata, and all that cool jazz. The girls had a blast, and I posted a few pictures online. Apparently this was the wrong move because the little girl's mother saw my post and asked what right I had to steal her daughter's moment from her. Her daughter saw the pictures and was upset she didn't get to come to the party because they didn't have the things we did. Her mother said I was a jerk for one-upping her just because my kids couldn't come to their party, and that if I really wanted them there, I would have just dyed their hair. Am I the jerk? Info. The invite was on the 8th as well as the hair dye request. A week after we RSVP'd in the negative, I planned a Halloween party on the same day, October 31st/Halloween. I did not throw a party on some obscure day that happened to be her birthday for the giggles and the petties. It was a Halloween party on Halloween. Info part 2. The lady is in a completely different tax bracket than me. She had a pony, assorted teas catered, and a wagon ride as well. The party I threw was a Frankenstein bounce house my husband had from a few Halloweens ago, a few piñatas from Party City, and like $120 of candy, and about $100 in snacks and some basic carnival games, cornhole, balloon darts, sack race, for those who are wondering what the difference between the parties were.
You know, I'm going to have to say that OP is the jerk. How dare they? How dare you, OP, throw a party on Halloween? You stole that poor little girl's moment of glory, where everyone should have been focused on her and, paid attention to her.
Yeah, I'm going to say OP is not the jerk here. I mean, first of all, it sounds like the kid was in a different class, so OP was inviting a different set of kids to the party.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like she was like, okay, you're coming to one or the other. She was just inviting a completely different batch of kids.
Yeah.
And having the party on the same day, which is literally Halloween, so.
Yeah, I mean, multiple people are allowed. I don't know if, the entitled mother in this story is aware, but multiple people are allowed to throw a party on Halloween, I mean.
Yeah, you don't own Halloween.
You don't own that particular day. Why are you not complaining about all the other parties that went on Halloween about that? Just being like, why did all these people throw a party on Halloween and not come to my party? How dare they?
Well, and also the audacity of her to request that, this parent change her daughter's hair for this party.
Yeah, I think that is, a very problematic bit of this whole story. Is they told her that their kids couldn't come to the party. It's really what she did. And now she's upset because OP threw another party for her kids on Halloween. It's a Halloween party. Ridiculous. Absurd. All right, our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Firing a Guy for Being Late? A guy I manage is always late, like 5 to 25 minutes every time. Generally speaking, it's not a big deal and it has no effects on the operation, so I let it slide. These guys work on call, so even the most diligent guys are occasionally 5 to 10 minutes late. Most of the time, they just call me and give me a heads up beforehand. However, after noticing a pattern, I spoke to this individual and said, if you're going to be late, you need to give me a call. Just let me know, that way I can plan around it. Next time he's on duty, he shows up 25 minutes late. No call, I find him and let him know that he's getting a formal reprimand. And next time he's late, he will be on a 10-day suspension. That's the standard procedure. He tells me he's sorry and it won't happen again. But then 2 days later, my HR director calls me and says a complaint was filed against me for harassment. The guy was claiming that the first time he was ever late, and it was less than 6 minutes. Also that I allow everyone else to be late. I explain the scenario to HR, but they are skeptical and make me withdraw my formal reprimand. I'm mad and I start digging through records and security footage for the past 30 days. I find emails where I documented conversations and 5 instances of him showing up 30 plus minutes late. I gather all of this and I send it to HR. They agree to reinstate the formal reprimand, but I insist that we go after him for dishonesty and insubordination, both fireable offenses. So, unless I withdraw those claims against him in the next 7 days, he will remain fired. I am secure in my decision, but I've heard some of the other guys whispering about me being a hard individual. So, am I the jerk?
I'm going to say that OP is not the jerk here. And the big thing is that this guy went to HR and reported OP for harassment.
Yeah.
And tried to lie and pin this on OP. If there had just been the formal reprimand and OP was like, well, you know what, I just want to fire this guy, that would have been a completely different story. But I think the fact that this guy, has this history of being repeatedly late, and he tried to be like, I was late only once for 6 minutes.
Yeah, he tried to cut off OP at the pass. He tried to be like, I'm just going to get this on record so that it seems like OP's, has a, personality problem with me or something like that.
Yeah.
And then that way, if OP comes after me the next time I'm late, it just looks like he's lying to make stuff up, And this is really ungood of this person to have done, because it doesn't sound like OP sounds like gave him plenty of chances to report and whatnot, but it was just too hard to pick up the phone and give him a call.
Right, and that's the thing is, even for on-call positions, you're still expected to, if not be there exactly on time, be able to report when you're going to be in, because they do schedule, things around these sort of things. So I think that asking him to call is not too big of a demand on him and should have been a reasonable thing for him to come.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do think that the whole, as long as you're getting your job done, I don't know that it's really that big of a deal. I do understand needing to have a heads up on I need to make sure that everything's covered and stuff like that. So I do understand that. So if it is a critical thing that he needs to know where people are, that's one thing. But if it's more I need to micromanage these people, it's another thing. Because I don't know, at my job, for instance, people just show up whenever they want to, and they after they leave for the day, they just leave.
This is specifically an on-call position, so that means they are needed within that time period. I'm assuming it's something like EMS or something.
Yeah, I was just saying that I don't know what the exact scenario is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what he means by, because he says they're on call, so they're routinely 10 to 15 minutes late, so I'm not sure why.
They're occasionally 10 to 15 minutes late, because if you're on call, you're coming from home, maybe you're in the shower when you get the call or something, or just about to hop in the shower.
I see. So he's giving them a call and saying, hey, I need you to be here ASAP.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I guess if it's one of those kinds of situations and then he shows up 30 minutes late, that's a little more problematic. So it just really depends on, I think, whether, I think that the part here that's absolutely clear is that the former employee was totally in the wrong for lying and trying to build up this false narrative to HR. Totally agree that this guy shouldn't be hired and he should have been fired. I do think that that's okay. So I was just saying that I think, set schedules and stuff like that sometimes are a little unnecessary, but it may very well be necessary in this case.
Our last story is, am I the jerk for admitting that I wish my son wasn't disabled? I am the single mother of 3 children. My daughter is 17 years old and my sons are 15 and 6. My older son is Lucas and he is completely deaf. When he was born, I was riding on a high for my daughter, who was and still is as healthy as a horse. I didn't know if he would ever be independent or learn how to take care of himself, but so far he has surpassed my expectations as a very independent boy. I sacrificed a lot for him, learning ASL and sending him to a special school and being patient through all the frustration.
Such sacrifice.
Yes. We were having a conversation and I brought up how I wish Lucas wasn't disabled more than anything. But people had to learn how to live with those things, which upset Lucas. He ran at me about how much of a jerk I was and how he hated me before storming off. I don't think I was a jerk in this situation. I won't be one of those parents who raves about how their kids are so brave just for being disabled. But for the sake of our relationship, was I?
So this is a really interesting story. When you were telling me about this one earlier, I thought that, it really sounded more like OP cared about the sacrifices, the imposition that this disability puts on her, as opposed to whether or not her son is thriving.
Yeah. And that's is the tone kind of I get from this, is that she's more concerned with that. And I want to say, first of all, like, that's just what she said in front of him. It's just not even a cool thing to say. We all have thoughts in our heads sometimes that are not necessarily great. And you can't necessarily fault someone for thinking. But like, to then say those out loud, like, as someone with invisible disabilities, like, there are my anxiety. I wish it could go away. I love for it to just disappear. But like my my neurodiversity, like, I don't dislike it. And like, if I were to make a list of all the things I wanted, making that go away would not be on there. Like, and so for the mom to say that, like, the thing she wants most in this world is for her son not to be deaf, when he doesn't give any indication that he has a problem with being deaf.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the key here is if the son had been like lamenting to his mother about how hard he's struggling or something to that effect, that might have been an appropriate thing. Like, oh dear, I'm so sorry they're having such a hard time. I wish you weren't having a hard time.
Yeah, it's perfectly legitimate to like commiserate. Like, if your kid is, no matter what, in what way they're not feeling good, to be like, I wish you weren't suffering. Like, that's totally legit. But to just like out of the blue, when kids
I wish you were normal.
Yeah, like, that's really what she's saying. And you can read that through the post too, like the way she's like, my daughter's still as healthy as a horse. And it's like, well, you don't say anything about your son being unhealthy. He's just deaf.
Yeah.
And like, her surprise that he's able to be independent, it's like, he's deaf. Like, he just can't hear you. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, with his ears, he can still communicate, because that's not, speaking isn't the only way of communicating.
Exactly.
And a lot of times, the hardships he faces are not so much from being deaf itself as from a society that doesn't, that's built around the idea that everyone speaks and hears.
Yeah.
So,
I have something that's a lot like being deaf. I'm left-handed. And society is built around people who are right-handed. I'm just kidding, people. I'm not really serious about that. Amber, the expression on Amber's face was priceless. She's like, what is Brian about to say here? What is he about to say?
Yeah.
And that's the story of how Brian got canceled.
Yeah, but I just think, like, I just feel so bad for her poor son in this, because like, again, like, his mom is saying, of all the things she could want in the world, is I want to change something fundamental about you. Yeah. Because it's uncomfortable for me. I don't like that I had to deal with learning sign language or sending you to a special school or any of that sort of stuff.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks to Amber for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Happy Friday, Junior.
Happy Friday, Junior.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all on tomorrow.
Bye.